And happy return of the podcast, everybody. If you hear some clicky clacky sounds or it sounds like someone's moving back there, don't worry about it. That's just internet sounds. Just turn up your dial.
Put in work.
Gentlemen, it's been a while. We apologize for our absence. The lack of podcasting was not due to multiple losses.
Discouragement.
But it was due to just
real life gets in the way.
Yeah, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, the holiday, and, other life events. So we do apologize, but hopefully you were on hawkscast.net and seeing that all of us were alive and well and chatting and talking about good stuff and a lot of bad stuff for the Seahawks, man.
Don't get mad at us. We had things to do, like going to see movies and going to other sporting events and things. Like, give us a break.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it was probably a good thing that we did that. It's a good thing that we had activities outside of the Seahawks because this is a rough year. The team has 8 losses. Like, the last time the Seahawks had that many losses in the regular season, we're talking about Pete Carroll's first 2 years, and they made the playoffs in one of those years.
Well, we're not mathematically out right now. I mean, other people keep losing to keep us in it. I know everybody else is throwing the towel, but did you see all the losses? I mean, like, there's teams that are 5-8 or whatever. Sorry, 5 and whatever listed. We could go on a run, and I keep telling myself
somebody's going to make the playoffs at 6-11 or something like that this year, and it's going to be ridiculous.
It's going to be ugly. Yeah, it reminds me of like the '80s. It reminds me of the '80s when, like, under Knox, most years they were good, or they were mediocre, but so, like, until really late in the season, I just continually do the math. I would check the newspapers and do the math every week, going, "Oh no, if this happens, we're still in it." It's been a long time since I've had to do stuff like that, like convince myself there's a chance or show myself how they could still get in. But
I mean, I remember in T-Jack's lone year as a starter, I think that was the 2011 year, I think we were 7-7 at that time. We ended up losing 2 in a row, but we ended up 7-9. That's what I know for sure. And I remember being really upset that, like, websites and news areas were talking about the playoffs, and they didn't even mention that the Seahawks were not mathematically eliminated, but they refused to acknowledge that they had like a 1 or 3% chance of making the playoffs. It was like disrespectful.
Right. Give us our due. We've got a 1% chance of getting in. Come on.
Yeah, it's a long chance, that's for sure. But hopefully we're all rested in regards to things that we've been banking on talking about and, storing up just gems that we're just ready to drop. But it has been a while since we've been on the podcast. We had two podcasts that we tried to do, but just, again, due to the timing. But we're here. We're going to talk about what's been happening the past few weeks, and it's a lot to cover. Because we had
Happy Thanksgiving, since I didn't talk to you.
Happy Turkey to everyone out there. It's already December. Ross is already in the second day.
Holiday season.
Yeah, today's a palindrome day. It's 12/1/21. The next one we'll have is actually until we get to the 10th, and then on the 11th and the 22nd, those will also be palindrome days.
You're like a special kind of nerd.
I just noticed this because I always put the date that we record in the title of our podcast. I was like, 12/1/21. Oh, it's a palindrome. That's weird. We haven't had those in a while, so.
All right.
Yeah.
I had a friend.
The things you think of when you type in random stuff, and you have to do this all the time. So, you just
like if you were in data entry by now, you might have like reached nirvana. I guess by finding random patterns in the data, just kind of escalated or advanced your consciousness, man.
No, man, I can't live in data. I have like fever dreams about numbers.
No.
Yeah. But the Seahawks, they have lost 3 games in a row for the second time this year, and there's really no end in sight. The offense is unable to sustain any type of tempo, control, or scheme that looks like it can stand the offense. And the defense is spending twice the amount of time on the field, and yet they're holding teams to under 19-ish points these past few games. all eyes now turn to which players will be back, and we're still in Week 13 as they face the division rivals, the San Francisco 49ers. This is the HawksCast.net podcast. I am Sam. With me, as always, Zeb and Ross. Find us at Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. Go to HawksCast.net. Our Twitter stuff is on the website. But, before we get into the topics, gentlemen, how are you doing? Not just from like a Seahawks level, but we're reaching the end of this weird 2021 year. How are you guys doing? Surviving? That's the way I always categorize it.
I'm feeling good, man. I'm riding dirty. I'm staying strapped. I'm sending hoes. Just regular shit.
It's called Wednesday for Zeb.
Wednesday.
I didn't realize Zeb had just come straight out of Compton. I'm okay. Kind of had thought that things were about to open up January, February-ish, and sort of counting my eggs before they were hatched or whatever, chickens before they were hatched. And then along comes Omicron and makes sure that my livelihood and whatnot are going to be threatened for a third year in a row. Pretty awesome.
That's pretty scary. I had definitely looked into flights for like midwinter break or spring break or even the summer or for something to travel, especially to Japan. But that looks like it's on indefinite hold for now.
The interesting thing though is that this variant may be the one that makes people go full like Republican. Like this one, like from just a couple anecdotal evidence I've seen, this could be like the one like there's literally no point shutting things down because there was a flight that went from South Africa to the Netherlands. Like that's a 10-hour flight. When it landed, 62 people in that time. 62 people like ended up testing positive once they landed. A flight yesterday landed in Japan that 70 people. I mean, like Japan's pretty strict. That means everybody who got on that airplane had tested negative, but by the time they landed, had 70 people positive. So this is like a variant that's a super hyper contagious. It's not any more lethal. I've talked to a couple of friends lately who were asking me about it or whatever, but it's not going to be any more lethal because that doesn't help the genes spread, right? The whole thing is it's a virus that wants to spread its genetics everywhere. It wants to be contagious. It doesn't want to kill people fast. So it's not going to do that, but it's going to spread everywhere super fast. So this may just be the one where it's pointless to even try to stop it.
The one cool thing about this one is that the name sounds like a Transformer.
It sounds like it's from Futurama. That's the first thing I thought of. Omicron Persei 8. Shout out to Lur.
Wow.
I was kind of hoping it would be Mew, but okay, you guys are happy, so. Because that would be sounding more like a Pokemon, which feels a little less threatening than, I guess, a Decepticon.
True. But back to, let's bring it back to what we are. We are the HawksCast podcast. But we have some great topics, so go to HawksCast.net if you want to talk about things that are not Seahawks related. But yeah, it's crazy to think about. The Seahawks have lost 3 games in a row for the second time. They lost 2 games to start the year, and then they won a game, and they lost 3 games in a row. They lost 3 games in a row again. All these games were with Russell Wilson. All these games were a 1-score game to a point. That Green Bay game was 0-3 for like 80% of the game, and then the defense just it couldn't do anything. It just sputtered out. And then the Cardinals game, that was a really close game up until the fourth quarter again, when the defense just couldn't stop the run game, and they were only getting like 3.5 yards per run attempt. But they did it enough. And then this last game, it was a 2-point game. And it probably shouldn't have been a 2-point game. I mean, Seattle looked awful pretty much all game long. But man, like, I can't remember being in this recent Seahawks life thinking about, the team's just not good. It's competitive, but it's not good enough to win, that's the thing to me is what's weird.
I mean, is it weird though? Isn't it weirder that for 10 years they were just too good? That's to me. I mean, I guess that becomes the norm, so it feels weird that they're not good. But I'm trying to, like, in a negative way, look at a positive. I'm like, name another team besides a team based in New England that can be good for that long. So if we have to take our turn with this kind of year, I don't think it's permanent. I don't see necessarily, I mean, we'll talk about it in the topics, but you know what? I think if we're going to have a down year, this is the time for it. Like, if they went to the Super Bowl this year and I couldn't go, I couldn't even entertain the idea I could go. If I couldn't go to the playoffs with crowds in it, even not like last year with the one game, I don't want them. I don't want to waste the year. We're gonna have a down year, and everybody's due sometimes. Fine, we'll have a down year. Patriots didn't go to the playoffs last year either, so they didn't. They didn't. Like, and everybody's like, "Oh, see, it was all Brady." Well, you know what? There was no Brady unless Belichick had had a hold of him. But anyway, it's weird, I guess, but at the same time, it's almost entertaining in a different way, isn't it? Like, instead of just debating the details of every victory, we get to debate pretty deeply the causes and the blames and the duds of the losses. If I was 12 years old, I'd be, angry every game. Right now, I'm oddly detached.
Zeb, what about you? Before we get into the topics, it's kind of closely related, but I mean, I'm still watching most of these games. Like, I'm not turning it off until, the game is over. But I don't know. It's weird to go through 10 plus years of the Seahawks with Pete and even with Russ, and to see these games play out the way that they are.
Yeah, I definitely understand. I feel you in the sense I'm the same way. I'm still watching every game. I still believe we can win these football games. I'm not turning them off early. I've done that 2-3 times my entire life. I'm not going to start now. You know what I mean? Those were ugly losses when I did it. So, it sucks that the team isn't playing well and we don't get to celebrate victories. But I agree with Ross. It's kind of more interesting to a certain extent that we get to kind of, we've talked about this season a lot, kind of the excitement of the unknown and the opportunity for change could be around the corner. So it's it's got its own merits having a season that isn't so good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Michael Dixon getting voted into the All-Pro this year. That's for sure.
I'm excited to see him as our starting quarterback next year.
All right, well, let's.
Do you remember when that used to happen? That era's gone away. Yeah. There used to be pretty common that, like, your punter was like your third string quarterback.
Yep.
Tommy Tupa, Ray Guy back in the day, and like that was the day when your quarterback also was your holder for your stuff. Everything's changed now. It's always the punter is the holder.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for it, because like if your quarterback doesn't get hurt, then all of a sudden, it cascades. But
I mean, Tony Romo is the reason why quarterbacks are not your holder anymore.
People say that, but I mean, it's
But yeah,
Jim Zorn was like, that was cool. There was a time where, like, after Jim Zorn lost a starting job when the Seahawks were on national TV, like the only time I got to see Jim Zorn was like when he was holding for punts, or for kickoffs, or for field goals and extra points. I was excited.
I bet you were holding out all hope that it was going to be like a fake field goal pass or something every time.
Yes, I was actually. Let him throw it.
All right. Well, we're going to start with topic number one. It's kind of a big one. So we'll start this with Ross, and then if we need to cut the supply, we'll wave the flag. But did you expect it to end like this, Ross? The season. There is a very small chance that they can make the playoffs, but at least this year, from where the Seahawks were, because one thing I remember, we went 12-4 last year. We won the NFC West, but we lost that first playoff game against the Rams. And there were a lot of people that saying it was a wasted year. Coming off of that loss, did you expect this year to end like this?
So when you say you're talking about this year, you're not talking about
just this year. We'll talk about the future in a little bit, but just this year.
Okay. I mean, none of us sat here in August or September during our podcast saying, "Oh, I expect him to have a couple 3 or 4 game losing streaks. I expect at some point Geno Smith gets to start. I expect Bobby Wagner to break all kinds of records by tackling people 5 yards downfield." And no, nobody expected this. I actually was probably the worst off. I was the one going, "Why are you guys mad that we didn't advance in the playoffs? We were 12-4. We won the NFC West last year. We don't look like we're in trouble at all. NFL's hard. Football's hard. It's not a big deal if you. It is a big deal, but it's not a big deal if you lose in the first round. People overblow that. Like, it's a 1-game sample, right? If it would be, if it was best of 3, maybe we win 2 out of 3. Who knows?" So I was the big one. Like, hey, you know what? We just won the NFC West. What are you talking about? We're totally fine. Although, to all of our credits, some of us, I think the 3 of us, all of us, had some reservations that the offseason mood was a little different. Not just Russell Wilson saying, "Hey, why do I keep getting hit?" but him starting for the first time to also try to tell the people how to do their jobs, and Dwayne Brown having a talk with him because he didn't appreciate being called out, which Rustin used to do. The whole strong safety who wants $1 million per sack or something, or $2 million per sack. There were warning signs, but I don't think I saw them. I didn't see this. And I'm still wondering if we really are as bad as it looks like. Sometimes things are accidental, sometimes things are coincidental, but it can look like a pattern. Does that make sense? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah, I think there are definitely a lot of people out there that have priors to cash in. And what I mean by that is they were predicting failure earlier, not necessarily just last year, but even before 2020. Yeah. And they're saying oh, it is unsustainable. They're going to crash in their face.
Well, eventually you have to, right? Yeah. You're right. There's a lot of people who are more interested in saying "I told you so" than a good football team, and so whatever. But again, there were some warning signs I think I missed, and I don't even think some of those people are right, because some of the things that people complain about, I don't think they're the most important things, but there are enough important things actually have been messed up at this point that some of it's coming home to roost. But again, I'm still curious about how bad we actually are. If we hit that, every game it's just 1 or 2, 3, 4 plays. That's what makes the separates it. But sometimes it really is just random chance. If Russ does actually make that 2-point conversion on in this last game, then it's a flipped coin. And who says we don't score twice in a row? So then we win that game, even though we were down against it all week. We were in the Packers game. We were in all these games. They're not. Even when the scores end up looking lopsided, some of it's because of really late game lopsidedness because of certain decisions. But even now, man, I don't think we're getting blown out and looks awful. Again, I'm not sure it's a pattern that looks like a pattern. It could be. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's fair to ask. Zeb, what about you? Do you think that this season was going to end the way it currently looks like it's going to?
You mean the 6-game winning streak we're about to go on? Yeah, that's exactly what I expected. No, I like Ross said, I think we all were a bit skeptical about this season based on how last season ended. But I don't think any of us would have said 3-8 at this point. So it's definitely been disappointing, and it's. The thing. Okay, so going back to this last game, like Ross was just talking about, we actually did come close in the end to pulling off a victory, or at least sending the overtime. And maybe things look a little differently if that's what happened, but you can't ignore how terrible that offense played that entire game, with the exception of those 2 drives.
Can we also talk about, just real quick, how fluky of a game that was? It's going to be 10-3, or it's going to be 10-7, but the point after it gets blocked, Rasheem Green runs it back for a 2-point conversion. The kicker gets smushed in the face. He still tries to run, and then he ends up pulling a hamstring a la Martin Gramatica style. They don't have a chance to kick a field goal with a 1:30 left on the clock, so they can't just seal the game make it a 2-score game. They fail to convert on 4th down, and then Seattle marches down the field for a touchdown to get within 2. We obviously failed to convert, but that was such a weird Seahawk game. Like it was very Seahawk like, and kind of almost I feel like in a bad way because we lost it, but I just it was that weird domino effect that happened.
The blocked extra point in return was one of during this Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson era, we've had a lot of really cool plays that are memorable, be it on offense or on defense or on special teams. Things that like stand out as being like highlights throughout the season for the entire league, like big plays and exciting things and unusual things. And we kind of haven't had many of those in a long time. And it's gotten a little boring. And it was one of those, a fun thing that happened in an otherwise terrible game. And, then these are the kind of things when you have these losing seasons, those are the kind of things that stand out and help to make it still fun and enjoyable. It's the thing, the reason why you remember certain plays from the 90s. Maybe you don't remember the record of the team that year or what week we were officially eliminated from playoff contention, but you remember those interesting, fun, weird plays, blocked field goals, blocked punts, stuff like that. So those are the kind of things where... What's that?
I was just going to say, last year was a successful season, but there's sort of a weird examples, like when Metcalf runs down the defender who'd intercepted the pass, and that play was shown over and over again. I mean, it's a failed play on our part. It's an interception, but it's probably the highlight of the season. Right?
A terrible play that ends up not as terrible as it could have been because something pretty cool and amazing happened.
Super entertaining.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't help but Russ just looked so off. Like the simple throws that he makes, 99 times out of 100, maybe 100 times out of 100, he's missing these. And I have to believe that has something to do with that finger still, right? Doesn't it? Like being that off on short, easy throws, like how is that even possible for, a Hall of Fame quarterback, for the best quarterback in franchise history?
I keep going back and forth whether I think he's hurt or not, or whether he's just...
It's hard to tell, right? Like what?
Here's the thing to me though, like that last drive. So last drive, you're not running your offense. You're not running a particular offense. You're running like your 2-minute drill. 2-minute drills are 2-minute drills, and like Russ has always been good at that. So all of a sudden we go to a 2-minute drill, and Russ is doing his thing, and everything is fine. So for 57 minutes, we're running our offense, and we can't do anything. And then Russ says, okay, it's the end of the game. And Pete's like, go win us the game. And all of a sudden, everything's fine. So what hypothesis matches that fact?
Well, we're running the 2-minute offense, but we're also running against a 2-minute defense.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they didn't want to give up a touchdown.
No, they sure did.
I think it's one of those things that's ultimately hard to answer because we don't know what the Washington football team defensive scheme is going to be. Other than look, we're going to give them the middle of the field because they don't have any timeouts. We're going to guard the sidelines, and then they messed up because they gave a 32-yard touchdown. They definitely did not intend to do that, and that was against 2 deep safeties. So it's definitely an issue where the Seahawks and Russell Wilson took advantage, and I don't think Russ had a bad throw, in that series.
When we're mathematically limited, I have a thing I really want Pete Carroll to do. And I want us to go super, super old school, and for even just a half, I want Russell Wilson to call his own plays. Not like old school in the huddle. Here's what the play is off of what he wants to run, what he thinks is going to work. I think that then he's going to call the plays he's most comfortable with. I think he's going to call the plays he's best at. And I don't think that Shane Waldron is a particularly good play caller. So I think it would be interesting to see what would happen. I don't think I mean it's funny that I'm saying that because I also think part of the problem right now is I believe Russell Wilson's ego and optimism have turned on him and become a negative, not a positive. I think they've just gone too far. But I would be interested to see what would happen.
Yeah.
Never gonna happen, but
yeah. I mean, back to the kind of the topic at hand. I don't think anyone expected this, and anyone that did say, "Oh yeah, the Seahawks are going to crash and burn this year" in the manner which they have, they're not a fan of the team because they've had too much success that they've bucked the trend. So we talked about this earlier, where the Seahawks generate a lot of luck, and that luck turns into wins in close games, and this is something that they've always done. So to think that all of a sudden they're not going to generate that luck anymore, I don't know how you could have said that when they've had so many years of this model. Now, I get fans that are upset that they choose to play this way. Like the fact that they're going to play a close game with every single opponent instead of just like scoring a ton of points and just like shutting people down. Even in the heyday of the Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson in his like earliest years, they really didn't blow people out. It took until like week 12 for the offense just to finally let go. I want to say it was that game in Toronto against the Buffalo Bills where they kind of just let Russ do whatever, and that's the game that he scored 3 rushing touchdowns in. And I think that's like the first implementation of like the RPO where it just like really opened up everything for them. But from even the Super Bowl year, they were playing close games against, questionably good teams. Like they had to have a pick 6 return for a touchdown against the Texans and Matt Schwab. They had to fight against the Titans and the Jags and all these other teams that are not good, but they play close games. They generate some magic. Defense gets a stop at the end of the game. Russ wins the game, on the final drive. That's been kind of the formula, and I get that people hate it and it's very nerve-wracking, but this is the year that it didn't work.
I mean, this is the year, not coincidentally, that Pete Carroll decided to hire an offensive coordinator that's not necessarily his type. He decided to let his quarterback have input into things that he would normally have input in Pete Carroll's philosophy. I mean, we all know Russell Wilson basically, I wouldn't say he handpicked Shane Waldron, but he had a big influence on that, or on the type, the direction to go. And that's why, actually, even though I named Shane a bunch and so on, I kind of say at the end of the day, it is on Pete. Pete, and maybe the exact opposite of what other people mean by it. At the end of the day, if you're going to go down and people are going to be on your case, then you should go down doing what you want to do. Pete didn't necessarily have to listen to Russ and didn't have to go get the newfangled offense. If you believe in what you're doing and everybody's mad and they're mad at your success, well, then that's the way to go, man. Just do it for one more year, and if they fire you because you didn't win a Super Bowl again, even though, come on, how realistic is that? Cool, fine, go out your way. And then when you're gone, and then they have Russell Wilson just doing his own thing, his own way with his handpicked guys, and it ends up being 3-8. See if anybody learns a lesson there. But instead, we've muddied the waters, and it's all a compromise, and I think Pete Carroll's mad at himself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good segue into topic number 2. So, Zeb, I want to know, is every player giving their best to the team? Are they giving their best to Pete?
Well, considering the results, I hope not. No, I don't know. Like, you've heard recently about, there's all sorts of talk, and there's people pointing out some low effort by guys like Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams, and fair or unfair, whether, I don't know that I agree, but that's what people are saying. And then there's also people saying that, outlandish, weird shit like Russell's trying to get traded, so he's playing bad. Like, I don't think any of that stuff is true. But for the amount of talent that's on this team, it sure feels like there's something's going on, something's wrong. And now we got all these rumors and stuff about what's going on behind the scenes, and players not getting along with coaches, and players not getting along with other players, and everybody's mad at each other over stuff, and it just makes the whole thing feel rotten, and makes it hard to point at specific reasons or why things are the way they are, or it makes it hard to address maybe what specifically needs to be corrected. So I don't know if it's an effort thing on the field or if it's an effort thing off the field, but something somewhere is going wrong, and it's adding up to losses. So I like to believe that these guys are professionals, and that they have passion for this game, and that they go out there and they leave it all on the field, as they say, and they give it their best at all times, which we know isn't true. There's always going to be guys who slack off here and there, that kind of thing. We've seen it throughout the years, but I hope that these guys are really trying. I think that as fans, we deserve a team that's giving their best effort.
Ross, what about you? You look at the Seahawks team. They're 3-8. They look like a mess for various reasons on any side of the ball. Do you think that every player is doing their best? I mean, maybe that's impossible to ask, but are they doing their best for Pete?
Man, if they aren't, I don't think you'd see it on the field, like Zeb kind of alluded to. I think if you actually watch any one particular play, I don't think any players... I don't care what the conspiracy theories are. I don't think players dog it very often. Because even if they've given up on this year, they are, A, like you said, professionals, or like Zeb said, professionals. And also, B, unless you're like a star that's going to get another contract off of rep, every play, every game, every series is essentially an audition. You don't want to be putting bad tape out there. Like, if the Seahawks, do you think you're going to get cut this year, or at the end of this year, and you want to play again next year, you're putting good stuff on tape, not bad stuff on tape. Now, I don't know what's happening out behind the scenes, because I think there's more than a few clues that people aren't particularly inspired by Ken Norton Jr., which is ironic because it's the defense actually that's playing better now. But I do think, and I wouldn't say there's not a good reason. I mean, I do think that there's some people think they're not being used right. There's people think he's not creative enough, and they're right. Sorry. So yeah, I wouldn't surprise me, like, if there's some negativity somewhere, and it probably shows up somehow on the offensive side. I mean, I can see their frustration. You can see their frustration, but I can't point to any one player that's not playing their best. Dwayne Brown's having a bad season, but I think he just got old. Posick is really good at the mental side of the game, but he's just not big and strong enough. And we knew that getting out of college. He was never going to be that kind of person. Russell Wilson is, he's the person I've been getting on the case the most, but at the same time, he didn't have to. If he didn't want to be out there, he didn't have to be out there. He could easily be saying, hey, remember, 6 to 10 weeks on my finger, guys. I'll see you at Christmas. He chose to come back. With certain people, I think it's maybe a mental prep thing. With some people, maybe it's the coaches aren't putting him in the best position to succeed. Some people maybe are just outclassed. Maybe our offensive line maybe years of not doing right by it, have caught up. Like, everybody was really excited except for me to get Gabe Jackson. Like, Gabe Jackson is not like all that, and it's really sad that we were excited to get him. I mean, that says a lot about last year's people. Maybe they try to get too cute for too long on the offensive line, and that's a position they thought they could moneyball because of everything else. I don't blame any of those things, because there is a salary cap. I don't know. Again, each individual play, I think you see the most players are playing the best. It's almost comical to say Bobby Wagner's not. I mean, he's making literally 1/4 of our tackles some games. But he's not making the impact plays. That doesn't mean he's not trying. I think he's old. He's becoming human.
I do want to shout out Bobby real quick. He was one of the people responsible for that interception. You know, he followed the tight end up the seam. He actually tipped the ball. Quandre laid the hit on him, popped the ball up, and, you know, Jamal Adams got the interception. So
yeah, I mean,
it's good that we saw that, and the reason why I pointed out is we need to see that 14 more times. And
yeah, exactly. I was about to say, like, so we're paying Bobby like $6 million per impact play.
Yeah,
we're paying. And it's really funny because I don't know if some people are noticing, but this Quandre Diggs is actually the best safety on the team, and like last game, his price for next year, we didn't sign him. We haven't extended him. His price for next year just went up.
Yeah.
We probably extended the wrong safety, to be honest. I'd rather give up, if I have to give up a number 1 draft pick at all for anyone, I'd rather give it for Diggs than for Adams. Sorry. It's more important for that particular defense we play even. So, sorry. Adams isn't a strong safety. I've just completely... that's the drum I'm beating all. Like, if you're planning your defense and you're plugging in Adams as your strong safety, then that's going to be an unsound defense. Because if you use him correctly, then he doesn't count as the strong safety because that's not what he's meant to do. So if you use him correctly, then your defense is going to be unsound because you're counting him to do strong safety stuff, but he's not going to be there. If you just play him as a strong safety, then why did you get him? Because that's not, doing orthodox strong safety stuff. He's not actually better. He's not an upgrade over the guy we traded, McDougal,
who has been cut by 2 teams already. So
yeah, I mean maybe he's a slight upgrade, but he's not actually playing him as a conventional strong safety. He's not an upgrade.
Yeah.
So you have to actually create a position and plug him in, and then you have to put Ryan Neal on the field as well. Or Marquise Blair, which is actually what I said, and everybody mocked me on our site when I said Marquise Blair is the key to being able to use Adams correctly. Because you put him on the field, now your options are there, you can take up the responsibilities, and you take a linebacker off the field, because you know what? Who's our third linebacker? What did he do last game? Exactly. There's 2 linebackers right now that matter, Brooks and Wagner. The other one doesn't matter. So... Yep. Adams is on there. You don't call him a linebacker. He just is him. Yeah, and then Ryan Neal or Marquise Blair plays the strong safety position, and that's how you make a new defense. Anyway, that's not the question. Yeah.
It's all right. I think this is kind of a hard question to answer unless it is based upon maybe your biases, either for or against Pete, and kind of like how your reflection of that, how you will read what people say. And what I mean by that is, we've talked about, the murmuring, the rumors. I kind of feel for a team that's 3-8 that they're not as loud as I would expect them to be. Most of the people that are talking about the team, they're either national people or they're guys like Jake Heaps who's basically like a talking mouth for all of Russ's PR stuff. Like, if he wants to get a word out, it comes out through Jake Heaps. So I'm surprised that we're not hearing the full-on nightmare that I would expect for a 3-8 team comparative to what we've seen maybe in other teams, not the Seahawks, but other teams that have had bad records like this. I do think that players are paying tough for Pete because there's an element of, yeah, I'm playing for my next year. If it's not with the Seahawks, it's putting good tape out for someone else. So there's not really an opportunity to just like blow a play because that's on film. And if any GM or coach sees that, why would they want you on the field? The fact that we have to question that because of their record, I think, is what's really unfortunate. And one of the things that I think about is after the Arizona loss, one of the media people, one of the beat reporters for the Seahawks, he asked Pete Carroll, it's like, how do you fix it? And this is the same, I believe it was after the Arizona game where Pete actually left the podium. He came back and he apologized, but he was clearly frustrated and he didn't have the answer. And that's the thing that I'm most concerned about. When super optimistic, pie in the sky, glass eternally half full, Pete Carroll leaves the press conferences, says he doesn't have the answer, whether that's just to him being honest in the moment or if it's, years and years of, that toll coming out, I am a little bit concerned about that, Whether or not he rebounds from that, that's kind of a different thing. But to see that crack when we haven't before, I'm concerned about that. And that's a separate thing, but that's Pete. That's not so much the team or how they respond to him or his scheme or whatever. But that is my biggest concern, is that can Pete give the best to the team? And I don't know if that's an easier question to answer, because if he's walking out on a press conference, if he doesn't know the answers, even in a moment of weakness, I don't know if he's up for it. And I think that's the first time that I've actually questioned if Pete Carroll is the right coach for the Seahawks.
I don't know. I mean, go ahead, Zeb.
No, you go ahead. I'm done.
I don't know. I think way too much. I mean, it's possible. It's hard to know. I mean, it's so funny because we get snippets of everybody's life. We see it for 30 seconds. We see it for 5 minutes. And it's so easy to get a distorted version of what people are like at the time. And yeah, I mean, in 10 years, Pete's never done that, something like that. But, I could talk about a lot of successful coaches who are also successful later, but I can point out to an odd press conference here or here or here, including things like walking out or shouting at the media or whatever. I mean, it's a frustrating year. And I believe, like I said earlier, part of it, I think, is that Pete Carroll regrets some of the choices he made in the offseason, that he let himself be sucked into the game a little bit that's going on, instead of just sticking by his guns. And so I think he is really frustrated. I don't think he thinks that he doesn't have the answers. I think before he watched the film and after the game, and he's exasperated because he's not used to losing, it's something to say. But I know that if you asked him right now, what's the way forward, he has an answer.
Sure.
Because after that, he calmed down. After that, he watched the film. After that, I mean, like, that's the thing that I don't think people talk about. You say, like, hey, when he says, I don't know how to fix it, he's not talking how you and I talk.
Right.
He's talking like, I don't even know what was wrong yet. I haven't watched the film. I don't know yet. I haven't watched all 22. Then he goes home, then he watches it, and then by the time you talk to him the next day, he's saying, even that week, it was a little bit out of characteristic. He did blame refs more than ever, and people jumped on that as well. But I thought that was weird, because when you're Mike Holmgren and it's after the Super Bowl and you blame the refs for losing the Super Bowl, you're a hero for saying it.
Right.
When Pete Carroll, probably just as legitimately, 2 weeks in a row, by the way.
Oh man, the refs have been so bad for the Seahawks this year. So bad.
They have. I mean, I hate to be just like I don't love jumping on coordinators. I don't love jumping on the refs either. I don't believe in conspiracies, especially with the refs. But I mean, if Pete Carroll points it out, that means he shouldn't be coaching anymore. If Mike Holmgren points it out, then he's a superhero. What? What? That makes no sense. It's the exact same observation that And to be honest, in Pete Carroll's case, it actually mattered more because in the Seahawks case, in the Super Bowl when Mike Holmgren said that, like, they didn't lose because of the refs. The refs really held them back. The Seahawks didn't bring their best game. But a couple of games we've had this year were like, if the refs had made correct calls or balanced calls, you're looking at really legitimate different results. So, it's a little weird for me that people are jumping on certain things. I think it's a difficult year for him. I think it's a challenging year for him. But I don't think he's out of his depth at all. I think he's made some mistakes. He's human. I think he's really regretting them right now.
All right, let's jump into that. So that's a segue into topic number 3. This is the Hawkscast Corner. We are all now Jody Allen. Congratulations, everyone. We're all really rich. What are you doing to salvage this year? What are you doing for next year? So, Ross, you're Jody Allen. You've changed your brain. No one knows that it's you inside of Jody, but what are you doing this year? What are you doing next year?
This is so hard. First of all, like, I don't want to go back on Pete and even Russ's philosophy. So until they're mathematically eliminated, I don't change that. I see people going like, well, put in Geno Smith. We may as well see what we have. We know what we have. Geno Smith's not a rookie. He's the dude who can't get a starting gig in the NFL.
Geno Smith went 1-2 with his one win against the Jags, which is maybe the one team worse than us.
So I don't, and I bet somebody pulls the whole, well, you know what, if you keep doing the same thing but expecting different results, that's the definition of insanity. No, dude, like, it's one or two plays. If anything, right now, today, I demote Shane and I take away his play calling abilities. I find one of his assistants who maybe has more experience but is a lower position and just say, hey, look, we want to see if we can find a rhythm. I literally would, even though I don't like the fact, I think it's one of the problems that they gave Russell Wilson too much power this past offseason. But with the situation we're in right now, again, I would get him even more involved in the game plan and get him even more involved with calling plays and just saying, hey, like, Russ, what do you want to run? What do you think is good? Because I don't think it's best to give him his philosophy because I think, like I said, his ego is now, to quote Top Gun, writing checks his body can't cash. But I do think he knows best what he can do. So for right now, I would just say, Shane, you're not calling plays. We're going to do that with somebody else on offense, and Russ is going to come coordinate with them. And maybe Russ is calling some more plays, has some freedom to call plays during the game. On defense, I do exactly what I said. I put in Marquise Blair, and I rotate him with Ryan Neal, because when those guys are on the field, good things happen. I don't do a whole lot with the defense because I believe in what it's doing. But I start giving Brooks time at middle linebacker because Bobby's not going to be here next year. And as far as next year goes, I bring in a different offensive coordinator. I cut ties with Bobby because although I still think he's a good guy, he's not worth his contract anymore. I see what I can get for Adams, but I think it's a sunk cost. I don't think anything can get back, so we're just stuck with that. But I use him different next year. Again, I use him. There's not a position like. You don't have to lock yourself in. Words are just symbols, right? There's not a position that there's a word for that I want him to play, but I want him to be on the field. I want to move him around. I want him to blitz. I want him to cover things in flats only. That's it. And I use another strong safety or maybe a free safety. I play 3 safeties next year, all the time. And make sure Michael Dixon knows that he's loved because he's our MVP. That's what I would do.
What's going on with Pete and Russ? Jody?
What, are you talking to me?
No, Ross is still Jody.
Yeah.
Yeah, you haven't... Like, is that something you address this year, or is that something you take to the offseason?
What's going on between Russ and Pete?
Yeah, Russ and Pete.
You
invite them to your skybox in the middle of the game, like... What are you doing? How are you handling that?
You know what? I think I lock him in a room with an iPad, and the iPad has the highlights of the Seahawks since they've been working together only. And I say, you know what? I know you guys think you can do things without each other, but can you really? And I say, you know what? You don't get to leave this room you're both locked into contract. So neither one of you leaves the room until you guys work it out. Man to man. Because you know what? At the end of the day, you know, you've got stuff there that actually is good stuff. And you should have mutual respect at the very least. And if you have respect, then you can work anything out, I believe. You both agreed to stay with Seattle. You both knew the other person was agreeing to stay in Seattle. Same as you both agreed in your hearts that you would actually be able to work with that person. Now, you don't have to agree with everything, this single decision, but you have to agree that they're good at their job. And go from there. And lock them in a room. Because to be honest, although I've talked about blowing it all up, if you can get them actually back to that mentality, put the ego aside, then I think they can both still be good. I don't think Russ is at his peak anyway. I think Russ is on the downside of his career already and doesn't know it yet. But he's still our best option for the next couple of years. Right. I don't think they trade him. I don't think he's tradable. I think he's hurt his value a lot. I don't think somebody wants to pick up that contract. There might be somebody desperate to do good, but he's hurt his value enough this year and the end of last year that is no longer. That's not like last off season. I wanted to trade him. Now I don't, because I don't think we can get what we used to want, what we used to be able to get. Right now, you get like 2 low firsts. That's 2 good dart picks, but that's not enough anymore. So we have at 3 picks and a player. I wanted him. I wanted to trade him rather. At 2 picks, I'm out. I'm out of that trade.
All right, fair enough, Jody. All right, Zeb, you've teleported into Jody's body. What are you doing for this year to salvage anything, and what are you doing for next year?
Well, this year's over. If I'm Jody, what I'm doing is I'm already talking to football people. I've already got my next GM candidates picked out. I'm selling the Trailblazers to Magic Johnson for whatever he wants to get for them. I'm getting rid of that distraction. We don't need that distraction anymore. So I'm firing Schneider. I'm firing Pete Carroll. I'm bringing in Eric Bieniemy or Raheem Morris or Byron Leftwich, someone young to come be head coach. I'm trading Russell for anything I can get for him. Ooh. I still think he has more value than Ross thinks. I still think you're getting 2, 3, 4 high picks for him. I'm trading DK Metcalf for a couple of ones, and we're going young and we're starting fresh for better or for worse. That's what I'm doing.
Wow,
you're trading.
Jody went full rebuild.
Yep.
I mean, it might be. It's funny because I was actually talking to somebody the other day. I was thinking like DK Metcalf himself may have maxed out last year. If he doesn't have a career going forward with Russell Wilson being Russell Wilson like last year, then DK's ceiling is maybe like more like Kenny Golladay than Megatron.
Yeah,
I think he's more than Golladay. I think DK is never going to be the best, but he has the ability to be one of the best. But he needs the right guy throwing him the ball. And I think for us, his value is in draft picks more than anything else. You already saw how frustrated he is right now. You know, if we draft a quarterback or whatever ends up happening, we trade for Zach Wilson and work out, like, he's not going to like that either. Like, let's give him to somebody who thinks they can deal with that. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I love DK Metcalf. He's my favorite player on the team right now.
Me too, actually.
But I do believe that he has just a lack of something Some people would say it's coordination. Some people would say it's mental. I don't know, but he's just not quite the he's not going to be Megatron. He's
Right.
not reliable enough. He's reliable enough to be in a good offense and be successful, but he's not. I think people will give more than he's worth for him. That's my opinion.
DK Metcalf, real quick, 47 catches, 650 yards, 8 touchdowns. Tyler Lockett, 50 receptions, so 3 more, 813 yards, so 163 more yards, but only 3 touchdowns.
Well, it's one more. I mean, man, it's one more reason. Sorry, Shane has to go because you have multiple games where DK Metcalf, of all people, is averaging, less than 10 yards per reception. DK Metcalf's not the guy you want to be throwing like 2-yard outs to constantly. And he's not even the best bubble screen dude. You can throw him 5-yard slants because I think if you throw him 10 of those, he takes one of the house, 2 for long gains. You can throw the short slants. So there's some place. But DK Metcalf's the guy you want running medium to deep routes and going up for the jump ball, because what's a 50-50 ball for everybody else is a 60-40 ball for him, and the other 40%, 30% of those you can knock away. So that pass should be our bread and butter. That should be a seam route. That should be a fly route. That should be post routes. And where are they? They're like so convinced. So concerned with proving he can do something else, they forgot to do what he does best. And, well, Shane doesn't know how to use them best. Shane didn't know how to use, like, if you look at the Rams, even, like, the Rams never got, like, the best. They don't get the most out of, like, Robert Woods as well. That type of person. They use Cooper Kupp really, really, really well. But we don't have a Cooper Kupp. We got DK. Use DK well, please.
Yeah.
Please.
All right. So Jody, I transfer into Jody. The things that I'm doing this year, it's probably a mix of what Zeb is doing, which is a little bit of nothing, and Ross, a little roster tinkering or a little bit of coaching tinkering, is that I would bring Pete into a room and I would just ask him, you're not talking to the media, you're not talking to the press, you're not talking to sports radio, you're talking to your boss, me, the owner. Is Shane Waldron the right offensive coordinator for this team? That's the first thing that I would ask, and then depending on his answer, we see what happens there. But if there's anything other than 100% empathetic, it's the injuries, it's all these things, he's a rookie, he's, hasn't done these things. If I buy that this is Pete's guy, I'll let it play out. And then I ask, is Ken Norton Jr. getting the most out of your best defensive players? Is Benson Mayowa, Darryl Taylor, Alton Robinson, Poona Ford, Brian Monet, Al Woods, are all of those guys legitimate people to drop back into coverage? And if this is a you thing or if this is a Ken Norton thing, is this the best use of their skill sets? And then depending on his answer, we kind of go from there. I then bring in Russ and I ask him, here are your numbers. Here's your wins. Here's your losses. Is this what you are now? Or is there a reason for this sudden drop? Are you injured? Are you distracted? Are you more focused on legacy than winning? And then I would bring, clips of him in 2012, 2013, 2014 when he wasn't making money and saying, this Russell Wilson never talked about legacy. This Russell Wilson never talked about MVP. This Russell Wilson said, go Hawks all the time. Talked about the team all the time. And I would ask him if that's who he is or if this is a new person that we're dealing with. And then depending on how that conversation goes, we let it go. But that's what I as Jody need to know now. Before I can make any future decisions, that's what I need to know from from Pete and from Russ.
So if you're Jody and you bring in Pete and you ask him about Shane and he says, Yeah, I thought that was going to work. I thought it would be awesome, and it's not working. And he's, it's my responsibility, as Pete would say. But maybe it's best for Shane if he goes somewhere else because he can have a better career working with a different offensive-minded head coach. So maybe we need to move on. But then you talk to Russ, and Russ says, okay, actually, I'm still about the team. I'm about the team. There's just, every team needs some twerks and some tweaks and some whatever. But I think we've made a good step. We've got Shane here now. I just need a couple more offensive linemen. So with the Shane step and give me some offensive linemen, and next year will be in our second year of the offense. So there's always a step forward. We're good to go, boss. So just as long as we have got Shane here. But Pete's saying to you, I made a mistake there. So then what do you do?
So if I'm in a situation where Pete's saying I made a mistake and Russ is saying I really need Shane to finish out this year, depending on how they answer, because if they just tell me, I think I made a mistake and Shane's not the right guy, and Russ says, I need him, they would need to explain to me, Russ would need to explain to me really, it's okay, if Shane's your guy, then why do you guys suck? That's what I would need to know.
And all right, so he says, okay, so we have Shane, but we didn't change our offensive line. Our offensive line is still the dudes that we had for Bevel or
then I would say Shoddy.
And he says also,
Bevel made it work. You got sacked with Shoddy. You got sacked when you were with Bevel. So is this a you thing or is it a coordinator thing?
No, he says, hey, you know what? It's the first year in the new offense. Sometimes teams need another 2 years in an offense to get it right.
And then I would tell him, it's great, are you going to be as healthy next year as you are now? And if, again, I understand the question you're asking, but I'm Jody fucking Allen. I could do whatever I want.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. So what do you do? If it actually comes down to...
If it comes down to it, I don't make that decision now. It's a question that I need answered now. So this goes into what I'm doing next year.
What would you do, though? If it comes down to it, and Pete says, we're good to go, we just need to get a different offensive coordinator. And your quarterback says, we're good to go, we just need to keep the offensive coordinator.
If that's what they tell me now in the moment, and I have to have that answered, what I would do is I would say, and again, it doesn't matter what they want, it's ultimately up to me. I would say, Pete, get rid of Shane. Russ, we're going to talk about in the offseason, and that's what I would do. Because what my goal is, because this is what my goal is at the end of the year. My goal is at the end of the year is, do I believe in Pete and John's philosophy on how to build a roster and how to play games, or do I believe that Russell Wilson is the key to long-term success? Before, I was okay, we can patch things up, we can keep Russ, we can keep Pete, or we blow it all up. Those are the four options. So you went with the we can still make it work with Pete and Russ. Zeb was we blow it all up and start over, find a new coach, find a new quarterback, find everything new, trade everyone away, cut all the dead weight. I am of the mindset that you need to make a decision. Are you in Pete's camp or are you in Russ's camp? And the question comes down to, who do you think is more easy to replace and be successful? If it's Pete with a new quarterback, even potentially with a new offensive coordinator and a slew of younger guys, are you going to see success? Or is it more likely that you see success by keeping with a seasoned veteran quarterback that can do 80 to 90% of what you want them to do, with a new coach that thinks that they can make Russell Wilson work? And I don't know the answer. I've been going back and forth on that for the past 2 or 3 weeks. And this is the first time that I might be leaning towards, if I'm Jody, depending on those answers, I lean towards keeping Russ and I let Pete retire or find a way to sever that relationship.
It's all fair.
Yeah. And then I revert, and then it's a responsibility that I don't have any insight to, and I'm just me and Jody's Jody. But, yeah. All right, well, we got to move along. We're going to move on to the final topic of the day, and the topic is the San Francisco 49ers. So, Zeb, are you glad the Seahawks were flexed off of Sunday Night Football?
I don't really care. Like, it doesn't matter to me so much. I guess we don't have to deal with the embarrassment of losing another primetime game. But I don't care what time they play the games anymore. I'm over it. I just watch them when they're on.
Real.
Yeah, pretty sad. We had that string of like 3 primetime games in a row, and we lost them all. And now we're not on Sunday night, which I think is actually going to be better because I get to go to a birthday party. So I'm looking forward to the birthday party.
See, that's good. That's the silver lining.
Yeah. I don't have to be that guy that's like, hey, happy birthday. I'm just going to hang out on my phone or over in the corner watching this football game of this team that's probably going to lose. Ross, are you glad that the Seahawks are flexed off the Sunday night? I mean,
no, it's a lot easier to watch for me.
The Niners they're 6-4. They're 6-5. They have a winning record right now.
I don't care about the records. I just want to sleep. I don't care if the records are win or lose. I'd much rather watch the game at 10 o'clock in the morning than at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, the Niners have won 3 straight, and they beat the Rams, they beat the Jags.
Jimmy G keeping his job.
And they beat the... Now, here's the thing. We have a really tough time with the Rams. The Niners have a really hard time with us. And the Rams have a really hard time with the Niners. Like, we're this weird, rock, paper, scissors team. And the Cardinals is like the one team that's like, we're just going to mess everyone up. But aside from your sleep, Ross, have you been paying attention at all to what this Niner team has done?
I haven't, actually, except to the extent that Jimmy G's my emergency quarterback in fantasy, where I try to get too cute with quarterback this year. Yeah. Other than that, I've been watching the Rams and like delighting in them bringing in Von Miller, them losing 3 straight. Watching the Cardinals do things I didn't think they could do. I'm just trying to figure out whether I'm still right about the fact that Kyler Murray will never win a Super Bowl. But the 49ers, it's such a hard team to watch, Like they're cool, like they're good in this sense. Like they've already gone through 11 starting running backs this year, and it doesn't really matter who plays. They're pretty decent. And they can't develop a wide receiver into like a proper star because they're like, I don't know, like that team needs a new trainer because like everybody on their team is always hurt. But this year, somehow they're still keeping it together so far. So kudos to them. I'm not really paying attention to them. I should probably watch a game or two during this week before we get to the game so I know what I'm doing. But I gotta say, my interest in the 49ers has really waned since the days of the awesome rivalry.
Since Harbaugh.
That was when it was super cool. Like when there was like his own college players he'd slide in, they were on our team, and the whole what's your deal stuff. That was cool. Super cool. The Seahawks have rarely had like a proper rivalry because of the distance and changing conferences and things like that. But that was really cool for a few years, wasn't it?
It was the best, but I would say that it was definitely skewed in Seattle's favor. There was only a few years where San Francisco really had Seattle's number, but I can't.
That's fine to me. It was just like one game though that you were like your brain just automatically treated just like a little bit different.
Like 2 years ago when the Niners were undefeated and Clowney finally was healthy, and it was like a Sunday night game and we won in like very like strong fashion. Like that was a great win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Outside of Ross's sleep pattern, apologies to that. Yeah, I am glad that the Seahawks aren't on prime time because it's a day game. I'll get my evening back. I won't have to worry about going to bed kind of bummed out because it's a game that they played close, but ultimately they don't win because I don't trust that they're going to be able to fix all the problems that they have. But, I think there is a sense, and Ross, you alluded to this earlier, that because we're not expecting a lot of the team, there's a sense of kind of relief. You can just kind of enjoy football and just be more of a casual fan as opposed to like someone who's like heart is racing and you're like biting your nails because it's coming down to another close game. You just need them to be perfect on this one last drive. There is a sense that, I am much better person by just watching football and not letting it dominate my life, says the person that's on a podcast. But maybe I'll take that into Sunday, and it'll serve me well.
That's fair.
Yeah, we'll see how long this kumbaya feelings senses. Like if it's a classic Seahawks game and it's down to just one score, I might lose it again, but we'll see. Maybe not. I don't know. But gentlemen, those are our topics for the day. You ready for some predictions?
Let's do it.
All right. Zeb, I'm going to hit you off with all of our predictions first. So, Seahawks and the 49ers, what is your final score?
Seahawks 31, Niners 24.
Interesting. All right. It's a lot of points. Seahawks haven't scored that in a while. Ross, what about you? What's your final score?
49ers 24, Seahawks 21. And we're like elated to have scored 3 touchdowns.
Wow. Interesting. So what's interesting is both of you have the defense giving up more points and the offense scoring more points. I think it will be a closer game. I think that it is going to be a 17-14 win for the 49ers. I think the Seahawks defense will continue to play well, but they will sputter. The Seahawks will score a couple times, but it's not going to be enough. The game will be out of hand by the time they can get that back.
Seahawks are 3.5 point home underdogs.
That's rough. All right, Zeb, who's going to have more passing yards, Jimmy G or Russ?
Russ.
All right. Ross, who's going to get the more passing yards here?
Jimmy G.
I think Jimmy G is going to dink and dunk us to death. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, that's how I would attack the Seahawks, especially with the screen game. May not be able to score every single time, but I think that's the way to do it. Zeb, over under 4.5 targets in the first half for one DK Metcalf.
Over.
I mean, wishful thinking. Ross?
Under.
I, too, am going to go under. I mean, if we can go almost 45 minutes without even look at DK, I don't know how they're all of a sudden going to, force his hand. Zeb, over under 1.5 turnovers for the Seahawks defense. They've had 2 interceptions in 3 games. It's a highlight. It's a high point of the year. And both by Jamal Adams.
Over, dude. I'm going over. I'm going all posy on these.
Okay. Ross?
Under.
I think they're going to get 1 interception. They're not going to get the second one. Jimmy G is definitely good for coughing it up. Maybe it'll go to a corner this year. If DJ Reed is healthy, I'd like to see him get an interception. Zeb, over or under 5.5, 3 and outs in a row. So the Seahawks tied the season for the most 3 and outs in a row at 5. Do they go over under 5.5? Under. Very positive.
Yeah, man.
Even I'm going under with that one.
Oh, I want to go under, but I don't know. I just don't know what we're going to get out of the offense. It's just such a mystery to me. So I'm going to go over 5.5, 3 and outs in a row. And the final prediction for the evening, San Francisco and Seattle. Which backup QB comes in first?
We're going to see one young Trey Lance about mid-second quarter after, after Poona Ford smashes Jimmy G's face.
He just sits on him.
Yep.
I abstain. I don't think we see either. They haven't been using Trey Lance as like the change of pace quarterback lately. They're keeping the rhythm.
I think Kyle Shanahan remembers the last game against Seattle, and he remembers Trey Lance, and he wants to shine, and he wants to show that he was right and that he got the right guy, and he is going to give Trey Lance a series. I don't think it's going to be due to injury. I think it's because he's going to, for whatever reason, think that he needs to switch it up, and it's going to be, a couple series, and then, like Zeb said, halfway through the second quarter, Trey Lance starts a series for himself. I'm sticking to it.
Cool. Real quick. I know we've gone way over time, but just real quick. If you don't know, just your guess. What's Russell Wilson's passer rating right now?
I think it's like
we all talk about.
It's like 105. I want to say maybe.
Have you got a guess?
84.
Right? Like we keep talking about he's having an off year. He's off target. He's a bad. His rating right now is 102.5, which is better than his career rating.
Yeah, but stats don't tell the whole truth.
Exactly. Well, I hate the QB rating from the beginning. Like, it double counts completions and it double count. Anyway, it's an awful stat.
Which to me is surprising that he's not hurt, because before this last game, he was passing at like 51%. So,
but I mean, the thing is, you complete a 60-yard completion, your rating goes sky high.
Yeah, the quarterback rating, the way it's designed and who designed it, like, it's basically like a commissioner of a fantasy football league where they're like trying to like reward like dumb stuff, like, oh, touchdowns are worth 6 points, but if you throw a 40-yard touchdown, it's worth more. It's like, dude, that has like no value. Like, what does it matter?
It reminds me of something like, I mean, because there's some value to it in a sense, but you have to be looking. I mean, it's almost like a specific rating to like the West Coast offense. If you're running a West Coast offense, it probably is useful. I feel like Bill Walsh probably designed this.
Yeah, but the thing that's weird is you look at the average quarterback rating for quarterbacks in 2021 versus what it was like in 2004.
But yeah,
15
that's
quarterbacks
exactly.
over 100 quarterback rating. Whereas like if you had someone in like 95, you'd be like, oh man, that quarterback's having a great year.
Well, yeah, but it's exactly because of like how football's changed to emphasize like short, complete passes. Like if you collected football cards and you're old like me, you used to like every wide receiver, like Steve Largent's. Like, do you know Steve Largent's average reception, like yards per reception for his entire career? It's 16 yards exactly. 16 yards exactly. Today, that means like you'd be like some like the fastest player probably out there, and all you caught are long bombs. But like he caught every route. But it used to be he actually threw long, lower percentage passes, right? The game is completely changed. It's all moneyball to death. It's all like efficiencies and things like that. So
there are 9 players with over 100 quarterback rating, and you can add 7 more that have a quarterback rating of 95 or above. And if you want to go to 94.2, you can add 2 more. So there's a lot of quarterbacks that are having, if this was the 1980s, those would be like MVP candidates, every single one of them.
Straight up.
Yeah. And gentlemen, that's our show. It's time for some shout-outs.
Yeah, I got a happy birthday to Zoe Kravitz and Yolandi Visser.
Okay. I second that.
Is that your shout-outs? All right.
That's it.
All right, shout out to Zeb and Ross. I am thankful for both of you for always doing the show with me as always. And for the website, go to hawkscast.net. We are the hawkscast.net podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast and Seahawks Forum. It's a weird year, but, I'm happy to talk Seahawks, happy to talk football. Go to the website. We're on there talking about it all the time, amongst other things. we'll see how the rest of this year goes. Maybe we do win 6 straight. It's possible. Maybe Russell Wilson finds his mojo again, and we just get to 9-8, and things fall our way. Who knows?
But you never know.
You never know. All right, everyone. We wish you a go Hawks. Have a great night.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.